everybody accounted for. We'd like to come out, make a motion to come out of the executive session. We have a motion.
Have a motion?
A second.
I'll second.
So we are now out of executive session, and we'll continue with this this portion of the meeting. We've listened to Mrs. Coons and Steve and their comments, and we appreciate the comments given by those here in attendance today, and all things are taken under consideration. At this point, we would I'd like to kind of go back over a couple of things that, you know, we do have in the county. We have setbacks and the different things like that about fences and stuff, and we feel that there is necessary rules to help protect everybody involved. And what we'd like to do at this time is bring this for a vote, but with that, I believe, Mr. Larson?
Yes.
You will be abstaining from this?
No, sir, Mr.
Oh, excuse me, I got you and you backwards, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, for the record, due to the business association I have with the applicant, I am recusing myself from any further participation with this variance.
Okay. Do we have any other comments that anybody would like to make before we bring this to a vote or a decision?
I do. I have a question to Mr. McGoy. The question that I have is, was there a complaint filed against the offense?
There was not specifically a complaint. There was a question brought to our office, can they do this? I was told no, and now she can. That was kind of how it was brought to us. When we went out and looked at it, and I knew I had already told her she needed a permit, that's what started this, and it was one of those situations where you can't write her for part of her infraction, you got to include everything. So that's where this stemmed from. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. And then the other question that I have, I do not have a copy of the ordinance. Do you have a copy of that?
I was highlighting that when I figured out I was on the road. Can I say one other thing? To a question you guys asked earlier about, if you look there on page 95, right above where I highlighted, the question about hedges is right there in A, 5.2.23A, maximum height of fences, walls, and hedges. I was looking for it, not finding it, but it was right in front of me.
Any more questions, Mr. Larson?
Not at this time.
Okay. Mr. Allred, do you have any questions?
No, sir.
Do you have any questions? You were abstaining. I have no other questions myself. At this point, we will make a motion to vote, and or let me bring this up for discussion. Do we wish to vote at this time? Make a motion to either vote at this time or hold and reconvene after we've done more research.
I would like to hold because I need more information. I need to understand more of what is going on here. As I say, I'm new to the committee. and I don't want to make a decision without all the information and all understanding everything completely. Because if I make a wrong decision, this affects things going forward. And I don't want to be making a wrong decision without all of the information. So I move that we hold this. Other two board members?
Do we have a second?
I think that's what he's trying to do.
Yeah, I'm asking that we
We'll
table it.
table it.
Yeah, I want more information. I want to understand more before I make a decision at this time. So I ask that we table it.
Before you vote, if you have questions, they're either gonna have to be asked now or in the next, I mean, if you do table it, they'll have to be asked then. We can't provide you with more information. It's gonna have to be, you look into whatever you wanna look into, I think. Because what we've given you is what everybody got, and you guys can't discuss it, so,
I understand that.
okay.
I make a motion that we take the information that we've received today and table the vote for a couple weeks. Do we need to select a date right now? 2 weeks from today?
So we will be tabling this hearing for this particular item, and no, we're just trying to set a date. So we will need to set a date. We have a proposal for April 5th at 9 o'clock here. Is that acceptable? A proposed date?
That's acceptable by me.
Anybody?
Is that your
Acceptable by
motion?
you?
I'll also include that in my motion, that we table this until April 5th.
Oh, would you be available on that date? At 9 o'clock, April 5th. Okay, so no further discussion? Or, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Do you need a second on that motion
Oh,
first?
I'll let her talk first.
I just want to ask you to really weigh in those 3 items that he spoke about, because we qualify for all 3 of those. So I'm hoping that you will take those into consideration as you're thinking about that.
Go ahead and repeat the 3 items. Okay, so we have a second on tabling this. Yep, we need a second on tabling this.
I second it.
Okay. Then we will be tabling this till March 5th.
Okay.
Or April 5th, actually. Excuse me. So, thank you for your attendance and Okay, we would like to continue with the item 3 of the public hearing, variance 23-1, parcel number 104-1386. The site address is 4269 West Palmer Lane, Thatcher. The request is made by Mr. Morgan Broderick for the purpose of a variance to reduce setbacks. So we'd like to open this up, but before we do open it up, I have to, best word for it, remove myself from that since I am in the storage business. So I have no say in this. So I will have,
I will take it, Mr. Chair.
yeah.
All right, for record, Ms. Reese. Mr. Broderick, if you would like to share some information with the committee, please step up to the podium.
Good morning, thank you. So this has been about a year in the process. We've already gone through the Planning and Zoning Commission hearings and has been approved, have gone through the Board of Supervisor hearing and has been approved for a 50 by 100 climate-controlled indoor storage facility. The lot is too small, and that's how we got the conditional use permit for typical commercial manufacturing zoning, which would be a 0 setback. The lot also, let me step back for a second. The comprehensive plan that's used by the planning and zoning for the area doesn't include every possible scenario, and it even says that in a paragraph, and that's the whole reason why the administration process is here with the commission, the Board of Adjustments, and the Board of Supervisors. So in that scenario, it doesn't fit into this. It also doesn't fit into any other category that is in the plan. It is too small to be used as a residence. It is too small to have septic system installed, and it does not have city sewer connection as it's not in the city of Safford, and it's not readily available or available at all. So that's the purpose of this, is trying to construct something, some kind of use for the property. As a comprehensive plan points out, it's there to help businesses and personal people be able to use the land appropriately, and that's why we're here. So the plan is for a 50 by 100, as the same I submitted with Planning and Zoning and the Board of Supervisors. That will put not at a 0 setback, but pretty close to it, as the lot is irregularly shaped. It'll be a little bit different from end to end, from front to back. So 2 points were brought up at the Planning and Zoning meeting. VIP Farms was concerned about visibility for them turning onto what now is the turnoff to Palmer Lane going to VIP Farms. It was discussed that this building's not going to be more than 12 foot tall. It's not going to stick out in the highway any further out than that dilapidated building is sitting there right now. So they were good with that. The other concern was Fertizona. They have flammable storage tanks in the back that are basically on the property line, encroaching into my line. The back of the building would be quite a ways from where those tanks are, and any storage facility has restrictions on anything that is can't say flammable items, like the term escapes me at the moment, but anything that would be at risk of combusting, like spontaneously or anything like that. So the plan, this would be spray foam insulated, so it would have definitely some, and it would be a steel building, so it would be not as flammable as a wood structure. Actual building permit has not been submitted yet, because this has been a whole year process basically for me to get to this point today, so we have not submitted any kind of building plans. Obviously that would have to go through the building inspector and the planning and zoning department when we get to that point. But I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
You say that you haven't started the permitting process?
Not the actual building permit, because a building permit's only good for a year. This has taken me about a year to get to this point right here.
Okay. I'm looking at the information that we were given, and do you have a lot layout of what you're asking, so I can have a visual of what you're asking for?
No.
Okay. Okay. I'm new to this process. This is my first one.
Mine too.
And I want to understand what is being asked of me to make, in our county. We are all citizens here, and we need to make sure that we're making our best decisions in what we can, because this does affect people, and that I take that responsibility very heavily on me. I do. Okay, so I'm gonna read here. It says the project description: to reduce setbacks to 0, the same as in C-M zoning, to facilitate previously approved conditional use permit approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So the Planning and Zoning Commission has already approved the use of this lot?
Conditional use permit, yes. It was submitted at a 50 by 100 structure.
Okay. Okay.
So the building itself, none of that has been approved yet. That wasn't factored into that decision. It was just whether or not it could be used for a commercial purpose in April.
Okay.
And that was yes.
They did allow, it's off the highway, they did allow a commercial purpose for it to be used for a commercial purpose in a zone, subject to a conditional use permit. And the idea was that it was going to be built into storage. But that's the extent of what was decided.
Okay. And so you're coming to us saying you want a 0 setback so that you can then design your building?
On the sides, that would be correct. So yeah, how I wrote. So it's typically you see other storage units along the highway. It's mini doors going down the side, a long building, they're individual units, you drive up to it. This is gonna be an indoor it'll end up having 4 doors, so it has fire exits. It'll have hallways. You'll drive up to one central door, and then you would go down a hallway, and then the doors to individual units would be interior. So it's not gonna be people gonna be driving down the side. There's gonna be one pull up front where people would then unload and take them into an interior unit. That way it's climate controlled and a little bit more secure. So I am asking for 0 on the side. I don't plan on building to 0 because it's impossible with the fence for Fertizona and the dilapidated structures that are on the other side. But if I get approved for 0 on the sides, then I have the ability to make it fit in the irregular lot as best as possible.
When you say on the sides, so I drove by there yesterday and I looked at the lot. So I wanted to be a little bit more informed of this. How are you wanting to orient your building onto the lot? Let me back up. There will be an entrance on the front of the building.
There will be 2, correct.
2. And where will the front of that building be facing? Which orientation, to north, south, east, or west?
It'll be facing towards the highway, to the north.
To the north, okay. And so you're wanting, your the east side of that variance, which would not have any, access or driveway or anything like that on that east side of your building.
On the east and west both would not have driveway access. It would have, there's gotta be a walk-through access because we have to be able to build the building and not impose on the fence lines on both sides and the property lines. So the property line at the very front, which is the shortest distance squeezed, which is all the way up to the highway, or to Palmer Lane, I should say, is approximately 54 feet. So at that front side, that would be 2 foot, but as it gets wider as it goes to the rear. So by the time it gets to the building, because we have to allow for parking up front, it's going to be approximately 56 foot wide. So that would allow a 3 foot walkway down both sides. And then if we're speaking of fire access, the fire department does have access because there's a easement for the railroad tracks that runs directly behind my property that has to remain cleared. They could get back there to get to Fertizona, to get to what I potentially build or anything down that backside.
Okay. And was the Planning and Zoning Commission aware that you were going to ask for a variance?
I believe so. I did write when I asked for the conditional use permit that it was gonna be a 50 by 100 building. If that wasn't specifically approved, I guess I can't speak for that, but I did write in there that I was asking for 50 by 100.
Okay. So correct me if I'm asking lots of questions here. The Planning and Zoning Commission, they're not part of the variance process, or are they?
No, the board of adjustment is a different process, so that's a different process. So what the planning and zoning commission has last was asked to consider and hold on the board as well. So then for conditional use permit that was from the planning and zoning board was the conditional use allowing the property's already zoned A, but it had a very small. Wanted to use it for the purpose of building. They were not considering a building permit would be for zoning. Any type of setback changes would have to be done within.
Okay.
If a variance is basically not approved with how it's built, is basically then only a building could be 20 foot wide by about 100 foot long, because there's really no change to the front back setbacks. I mean, it wouldn't be by any means financially feasible for any type of business, especially because you would never be able to put any kind of septic or sewer or anything there. Okay. With storage units, none of that is required. Water's not even required.
Okay, so what I heard you say is if you were to meet the offsets, you'd have to have a significantly smaller building. You said 20 by 100?
Yeah, approximately, but.
Yeah. Say that again, Mr. McCoy.
You can make 32 or 33 feet. You gotta have, currently, we're asking for a 10-foot setback on each side. He's asking for what? If the lot's 53 feet wide, minus the 210, it would be 30 feet.
Okay. Anyone else got any questions while I think?
And you're asking for all 4 sides
To 0?
setbacks to 0?
No, just the 2 sides to 0.
The east and west?
Correct, sorry. Specifically east and west, yes.
Have you spoke with the AZ feed and the ranch about what you're thinking, just to share the information with them?
With who? I'm sorry.
With the Arizona feed and your
Fertizona.
Fertizona. excuse me,
Fertizona
sorry.
and VIP
Yeah.
Farms, yes, spoke with them in depth at the planning and zoning meeting. They brought up their concerns in public, and we addressed them, and they were fine with it. And then we spoke afterwards, and they were both actually very willing to help me and thought it was a great idea and offered equipment, whatever they could do to help me, so.
What were some of their concerns?
It was the ones I addressed. VIP Farms was concerned about semi-truck visibility turning into what is now the main Palmer Lane, because they have the large buildings back there. But the building will be nowhere any further forward than Fertizona or that rundown house that's there on the corner. Nothing is gonna stick out into what is currently Palmer Lane anyway. So that's not an issue. They were worried about height. It's only gonna be a single story. It's not gonna be a two-story. And then VIP Farms was concerned about their flammable tanks that they basically have on the property line in the back corner, which I'm sure are grandfathered in. There's nothing that can be done about it, but we're not gonna have open flame or bonfires or anything back there.
Okay.
How many units is that gonna give you?
So the plan is it would be, if it was 50 by 100, it would be 20 10 by 10s and would be 40 5 by 10s. Smaller units, climate controlled. The college is what we expect to be a large number when students leave for the summer. They don't have a whole lot of items, and if they do want to store things, it would be better in climate controlled facility. 20 10 by 10s and 40 5 by 10s. That only equals 4,000 square foot of storage space. 1,000 square foot of it would be in hallways, ingress egress hallways, 5 foot wide, 100 foot long each.
What is your proposed method of climate control?
So it would be a metal building structure, as most commercial buildings or mini storages are constructed, with closed cell spray foam insulation. And then I'm not an HVAC expert, but the required heating, ventilation, and air conditioning to achieve climate control.
Okay, so each, is each unit have its own head unit inside of it, or will it just be blowing through each one?
It will not have its own unit.
One central unit cooling, and it just circulates through all of them, or?
From my research primarily and dealing with B&D air conditioning and such, it sounds like it's gonna be best to have two larger units that would circulate through the whole building. So it will not be an individual unit for each building.
Okay. How long have you owned the property?
Oh, going on 6 years, and I've spent the last 6 years trying to get a hold of the people that own the corner with no luck, to try to make it larger, to make it more feasible.
So there's an adjacent property next to yours that's?
It's been abandoned for 20 plus years that I know of, yes. The structure's about to fall down. It's full of bees right now.
I'm gonna pull this up on Google Maps real quick, and I just wanna look at that property.
Here you go. Here you go.
So west of Fertizona, there's 3 parcels, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yours
There's
being one of the 3.
the closest one to Fertizona directly to the west, and then there's 2 oddly shaped parcels right there. They're both owned by the same person.
And that triangle piece there?
That triangle, if you combine the 2, it would be a very good triangle, yes, of theirs.
this piece right here is kind of split funny.
Okay. What is the depth of that lot?
Unfortunately, I'm not as prepared for this as I was for Board of Supervisors and Planning and Zoning. I believe if you went all the way to the tip, it would be approximately 140 feet. Probably deeper than that. 160.
On the long side, and then it,
Yeah. And then I believe from the Palmer Lane to the corner, I believe is 125. That fence line along Fertizona.
Okay. And you're gonna go 100 feet deep into the lot?
Correct. So there'll basically be a triangle remaining at the rear. In discussions with the Planning and Zoning Department and engineers, it would be necessary for a small retention back there.
To retain water?
Correct.
I know his requirements in A zone are 25-foot rear setback and a 20-foot front setback. And he didn't ask to vary those, but he did have room for both of those. So he had at least 25, I think he had more like 35 in the back, depending on how you measured it, and 20 at the front.
Okay.
and in that zoning, Steve, while you're there, the side setbacks is 10, you said?
10 is your side setbacks in A zone, yes.
In A zone.
A question for you, Mr. McCoy. How common is this to request a zero setback on a commercial property? Do we have any precedents that we've already set in our county, or is this a first time?
Loud enough.
Originally, his intention was to buy the other two lots and come in and try to get CM zoning. CM zoning comes with zero lot line setbacks in commercial.
Okay, so the Planning and Zoning Commission granted,
The use permit, but did not grant the CM zoning. So therefore, he did not get the setback difference. He only got the use difference.
explain to me a use.
If you came in and said, I want to build storage units, we would refer you to CM zoned properties. That's where it best fits.
Okay.
But it's a 1 acre minimum, and he can't come up with an acre. So we refer him to a conditional use permit.
And what does that initial use permit grant him?
It grants him the allowance to build commercial storage units on a non-commercial property for that specific reason only. I hope I worded that right, but he can't change his mind and do something else without going back through the process.
Okay, so from what I understand is that he went to the Planning and Zoning Commission and said, I want to build storage units on this. They've issued an initial use permit, understanding that with the intention of allowing CM rules to be applied to this property?
No, not necessarily. They just allowed him
A
to
use,
put
a
that
use,
use.
right? It's a use overlaid with the A setbacks.
Right, it's still a zoned property, but he can build storage units on it. That's all it gave him the right to. It's just, they just said, you know what? That's a good use for this property at this place along the highway. That's basically what he was given. Planning and zoning only referred that to the board made the decision.
You said the Fertizona property is a CM?
It is not, it's grandfathered A zone.
It's an A zone. And to the west, what is that zoning?
That's A zone also.
And Mr. Broderick, you've made contact with your landowners to your west, and they're not interested in selling?
I've attempted to make contact with them through phone calls and letters. They have a care of address in California. I was able to contact a great niece of the person that supposedly owns the land, but they're not on speaking terms family, and I couldn't get any contact information. All my letters have never been answered anything. My understanding, the person that owns it is rather up in age, but still own it and they pay their taxes, so.
Okay. So the landowner is not, you just haven't heard from them?
Not available, never been able to make contact with them.
The name of the landowner is, we can look it up here.
Lupe Mena.
And where does she reside?
I want to say San Bernardino, California.
Okay.
It might be a different town, but it's in that area.
It's not next door.
Correct.
What is your, do you have any concerns of a zero setback? I guess if you could buy the other property, then you could get it rezoned to CM, correct?
I believe so, yes. I mean, that would have to go
And
through.
then you wouldn't be here.
Absolutely, but it's been about 6 to 7 years I've been attempting to, and time to do something with it, because it's just sitting there, and this is, in my imagination, the only thing that's feasible to do, because there's no possibility for septic or sewer. I would have rather put in a variance to change the comprehensive plan to just make it commercial manufacturing, a CM zone, because it's not technically on the highway, but you can't get much more highway than it is, because there's literally a billboard right in front, the only thing separating the highway and the property, right next to a fertilizer plant. I don't know who'd want to put a residence there. I certainly wouldn't.
Any other questions? I seem to be talking a lot here.
Do you have anything else you'd like to share?
I don't believe so, but I'm happy to answer any more questions. Thank you.
I think go ahead and set this to application to a vote. The standing members. Is there a motion to?
Well, Mr. McGoy, are you having something you want to say?
I was just gonna suggest that if you wish, there is, I mean, Mr. Broderick could provide us a plot plan that shows what he wants if you want to table it and wait for that, but that's.
I think I have him in my mind of what he's asking. Basically, there's just going to be very little on the end.
His specific application says 0 lot line, so that's what you would be approving if you.
Okay. So let me ask the other members of the board. Let me ask this, can I ask their opinion at this time, or is this not the place or time to ask their opinion? Or do we just vote and that's it, yes, no? I don't know, I'm new at this. Tell me yes, no, or no. Say again? Okay, are you comfortable in what information you have? And
I am. I said I was part of the planning and zoning process, so I'm familiar with the property. And now knowing what the plan is, looks clear to me.
okay. I don't know you guys' names, I'm sorry. Here, I'll do that, you guys can see what my name is. Okay, I've got no further questions.
And we'll share it.
In that meeting, did you see a site plan?
No, because again, it wasn't a matter of what the plan was, it was requesting
The use of
use
the
of the
property.
So kind of the way that I feel about this is if they've given the initial use permit for this of CM, and correct me if I'm speaking out of line, anyone, because that's, I don't want to do that, is that if he was to had gotten, if he could have zoned that property CM, then he wouldn't be here.
Exactly. That's the only thing that's up against him, is not being able to purchase that property to give him that size.
Yeah, and I went by and looked at the size of that property and its location. There is, I wouldn't want to live there. And so, okay, I'm good.
For clarification, if he were to obtain both the lots to the west of him, he still would not have the acre. He might still get the CM, but he would not have the acre, I don't think. I think it was 0.6 something all told. So he might still be in the same position. He'd just have room to move the building over.
I'm not trying to sound like what if, but the property to the west where there is a current residence, I understand it's dilapidated. Could permits be issued to refurbish or rehab that house?
I believe so. It's an existing lot. We give permits on existing lots, even though they're not compliant. It's not really a grandfathered in, but it kind of is.
If they were to
what the right term
rebuild on the same footprint, you would issue a permit?
Yes,
Historically, you have?
correct.
I'm sure this is well known, but just one thing I want to bring up. Conditional use permit doesn't stay with the property. It's only for me personally to run and operate a business out of there. So if I ever sell the property, the conditional use permit for storage units there goes away.
The buyer would have to come back.
But unless they were built.
Well, it just stays with me personally.
Yeah.
So basically, I could never sell it as storage units, which is unfortunate, but I don't really have that in my plan anyway.
What other businesses do you own, or is this your first venture into this?
I own a portable storage manufacturing here in town.
Okay.
Or, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. He's applied for a variance on the side setback from 10 to 0, but he's not applied for a setback from the front back. Is that correct? Or setback for jumping on the front.
The project description says to reduce setbacks to 0, the same as in CM zoning to facilitate previously approved conditional use permit. But yeah, I guess what you're voting on is 0 setbacks on all 4 sides. That is what it says in his application. That's not his intention to do, but that is what you're giving him room to kind of shove it off to this side or this side, or he's gonna have to have parking, so he's gonna have to have a front setback. And he's gonna have to have drainage, so he's gonna have to have a rear setback. So we're not gonna allow it without him following the building codes. But, so the only place he can really make that work is on the east-west side. But
So-
that is not what the application says.
Okay, I got another question for you, Mr. Broderick. You'd step up there. My question is, so since you're gonna have 20 feet in the front and 20 feet in the back, but you're gonna have how many feet on each side? How will you be able to access the back of your property?
So you would be able to walk down each side or carry fire hose or fire extinguisher, or anybody that needed to access the rear of the property could do that completely on the property. The building won't be so wide that you wouldn't be able to walk down the side.
So there will be no way to get a vehicle to the back of your property.
There is along the railroad tracks. There's an easement along the railroad tracks at the rear that you would be able to drive down.
And have you contacted are you required to have an agreement with the railroad to access that easement, or is that just assumed?
There is no requirement because there's no need to, it's not gonna be used. It would be basically emergency vehicles only, which I don't assume that the fire department needs to call the railroad if they're gonna drive down the railroad tracks in an emergency situation, but there's zero need for any vehicle to get to the rear of the building whatsoever.
All in the weeds away sometimes. When we have a good rain year, occasionally. So-
Should be enough room to go down the sides, at least with a wheelbarrow.
Okay. Yeah, that was another question I had, is how would you be able to access the back of your property to maintain it? Or if you have some need of maintenance on the back, how would people be able to get to the back of your building or on whatever to maintain it? Can they get around it sufficiently to be able to do all the maintenance that's going to be required years down the road?
There will be two rear doors out the back of the building. As I said, there's gonna be two hallways going down the building, and I'm gonna have to have emergency exits out the rear. So there will be two rear doors that will be typically fire exits, but could be accessed for maintenance or whatever is necessary to get to the rear of the building for. As the property owner, it won't be public access.
And what are you planning on? Are you planning on putting any fencing around your property? And if so, what type of fencing would you be putting up?
Certainly not a 6 foot along the front. There's no intention to do fencing at this point in time. That would have to be approved through the building department, but it'll be a secure enclosed building, so there's no need that I can foresee of a fence being around it.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, Mr. McGoy, can you discuss some of the maybe fire codes regarding his proposal?
Specifically, probably not, but fire code still applies. If I understand legal counsel right, this variance doesn't allow, I mean, you can't get a variance from fire code. So that's still gonna have to be addressed during the building process, part of the, in the building permit process. Fire code still has to be dealt with. You're giving a variance to a local code, and that's allowed. But fire and safety stuff you can't give a variance to, as is how I understand it. And do you agree?
Okay. I have another question for Mr. Broderick. You had stated that this use permits resides with you,
The conditional use permit.
and you cannot sell it for the, and say that I have a commercial property or I have a property, and they could use, if was something to happen, we're all gonna end our, at some point, we're all gonna be gone. And then what happens to that property? Does the use permit continue on through if he has a trust or a will, or does it cease to exist and then now that property is what? What happens to that property after he is deceased? The question that I have.
I don't know if that's a me question, but my understanding is the use permit goes away unless somebody else were to go through this entire year-long process that I've gone through to get a new one, but it would basically cease to exist.
Okay. I've got some elderly parents, and we're all preparing for that. And, you know, I just want to know how that continues on. Because I'd hate to see your building turn into something like next door on that property, and you've put all this effort into it, and it generates revenue for our community and provides services, and then all of a sudden, it becomes a property that no one can touch. And that would be sad that you put all this effort into it and then.
It's unfortunate, and I wish, and maybe it's my fault in hindsight, but I wish it would have been a special use permit to where it would have stayed with the property and not with me. And maybe to my, need to do a little bit more research. Maybe that's something, once it's built and established, that I can go back and apply for it to be a special use permit so it stays with the property, but I don't know that information right now.
Yeah, I just hate to see all your work and effort, and because anytime we have services built in our community, we want them to thrive and continue on. And we've seen abandoned buildings throughout our community, and it's like, at one time it was very thriving and very important to our community, and then now this is no more. So. I have no further questions. I keep saying that, but I'm sorry. This is my first rodeo here.
Mr. McGuire, I have one more question for you. With this, with commercial zoning saying that it has 0 lot lines, is that applicable when it's commercial against residential? Or is that on a commercial lot line?
I'd have to look into it to know for sure, but I believe that if given the zone, it applies. That's why it doesn't apply here, because he has a residential zone, so that's why it doesn't apply. If he were given commercial, and I probably should, there's 5 different or 6 different commercial zonings, and there may be some differences, but this is the most common one that we're talking about, the CN. It has zero lot line. I would liken it to Main Street here. I mean, you have a block wall up against a block wall. These people have, their building is, and they're built clear to the sidewalk and clear to the alley. Every piece of property they have has something on it. We don't have that situation very often out in the county where, you know, where there's a sidewalk owned and parking spaces owned by the city. But that's basically, that's the situation, and therefore he's got to figure out and put his parking and his sidewalks and all his other stuff on his own ground, because it's not been provided by the county. I don't know if I answered your question. I think I got off track there, but.
Those properties that you're referring to are commercial, next to commercial, Do you have any cases where there's commercial next to residential?
Well, I believe across the street at Allen Pump Company, they're commercial manufacturing CM zone. They haven't built to their property line, but they have residential behind them and a park to the side of them and a farm on the other side of them, and theoretically, they could build to their property lines.
Even in the rear where it would be bordering residential?
Yeah. I mean, if you put a building, they would still have to deal with their drainage, so it's not likely, you know, that somebody's gonna build 100% of their lot, but I believe that we allow for there are some percentages of your lot you can build on, and I can't quote them to you, and I don't have them with me, but, and I wish I could memorize that book, but I can't do it. I can't think of any situation where there's actually a commercial building built on a property line in the county. I don't know of any. If anybody has them, it's probably Dennis, and he can't talk right now.
Is there any further discussion? If there's no further discussion, I'd ask the committee if they would like to see, place a vote towards the application at this time.
I'm gonna say yes.
So you have a motion to
I motion that we vote on this.
second?
To vote on it?
Yeah. He just, no, are you saying that you want it favorably, or you want to vote on it?
I want to vote on it.
Okay, so that's.
I'm moving that we vote on the motion placed before us.
So, yeah, it's, wait,
Maybe I'm saying this wrong.
yeah, so are you saying that you want it to be favorably look forward, approved? Because it's not a motion that we're gonna vote, I'm already saying it's up for vote, so now it's up to the committee to either motion to vote for it, to yes or no to approve it or not. I'm sorry.
I'm in favor of it.
Okay, so it's a motion to, you'd like to make a motion to approve it?
Yes.
You have to state it.
Okay, I move that we approve the action before us of approving the offset.
Is there a second?
Or do we?
Or can I just ask it here in open public? Can there be two motions? No, can I just make a different motion?
Yeah, you can do it. Or you can, if you have a different,
The chair can announce that Mr. Larson's motion dies for a lack of a second, and then you can make another one.
So the chair recognizes that the motion made by Mr. Larson is halted and the floor is open.
I would like to see a site plan, so I motion that we see a site plan of exactly what we're gonna be approving.
So, in looking and wanting that information, are you asking for table?
Yes, sir.
on this? Okay, so if you could state that.
I motion that we table this, requesting that we see a site plan with the proposed building and what setbacks will be in place
To a specific date?
for the same meeting of March 5th,
April.
April 5th, sorry.
So the committee is going to table this until we do have the information on the plan, that you have, the site plan that you have for April 5th at 09.
Are you, you're seconding that motion?
I'm seconding that motion.
Are you available on April? Are you available on
Yes.
No, I'm supporting the committee. If there's no further information or discussion, I could go ahead and, yes, ma'am. Can you have that information available by the 1st? Yes. Okay, so for the record, the information we provided.
That gives us 4 days to. the meeting
How
will be
soon
on the
could you
5th.
have a site plan? Is that good with everyone else?
Yes, appreciate it.
Okay.
Is there any further discussions? If not, I'd like to close today's meeting. Thank you, everybody.